Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host, Flavia Barris, as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media, including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur.
Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Today we get to speak with Glenn Poulos. He is the EVP, which is Executive Vice President and General Manager of NWS and the co-founder of Gap Wireless Inc., where he has spent his entire career at the intersection of sales, marketing, and leadership. He's got a proven track record in driving growth in the telecom and tech distribution industries. Glenn is also the author of Never Sit in the Lobby: 57 Winning Sales Factors to Grow a Business and Build a Career. As a LinkedIn top voice, podcast host, and sought-after speaker, Glenn is passionate about sharing actionable insights that empower business professionals, sales teams, and entrepreneurs to success. His expertise spans sales strategies, customer relationships, and building a thriving company culture. When he's not shaping the future of telecom or coaching sales leaders, Glenn enjoys life as a proud Canadian, a dynamic DJ under the alias Fossil, and a devoted dog dad to two French bulldogs, Pierre and Jean-Jacques. Very French, these bulldogs. Can't wait to speak with you. Welcome to the show, Glenn.
Hi, Flavia. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's really fun to have you here. And by the way, I love that you named your French bulldogs Pierre and Jean-Jacques. It's very, very French. Very perfect. And I'm just kind of curious how you got to where you are. I mean, you work in these sort of niche industries, and I'm just curious on that path because people have all kinds of different paths. There's people listening to the show who aren't even sure where their path is leading and where they'll end up in a number of years. So tell us how you got here.
Sure. So I'm 62, born in 62. And I guess this is the only year I can probably say that. And my first job, I went to school for electronics to become an electronic technician. And the government hired me out of school. I thought I was going to be a civil servant for the rest of my life. And it turns out that my boss kind of pulled me in his office and told me I wasn't cut out for government work. And he thought I would be better suited to something in sales or something like that. And I ended up taking him at his word and diving into sales back in the 80s. And I went and got a job at a sales company, and I worked for them for a number of years. And then I realized that, hey, owning the sales company looked a lot more lucrative than being a salesperson. Although being a salesperson has a lot of benefits and a lot of, you can gain a lot from just being a salesperson. But I saw the leverage in starting my own sales company, which I did. And I did that in 1991. And 15 years later, I sold that business, and I had the opportunity to actually start another business. And in the mid 2000s, I started another sales business, ran it for 15 years, and I sold it in 2022. And I worked for the private equity right up until a few weeks ago. Well, now it's a few months ago and I kind of finished my 3-year stint with them after selling the business. And I left NWS a few weeks ago, moved to Florida, and I'm now on my third venture, running a sales company. Hopefully third time's an extra charm. And that sort of brings me all the way from 1985 all the way up to today. And sort of 40 years later, a life, in sales, right? So
amazing. I mean, you've done so many different things, and you've put a lot of that into your book. Tell us a little bit about the book. It's called Never Sit in the Lobby: 57 Winning Sales Factors to Grow a Business and Build a Career. Great title. It's very intriguing, like Never Sit in the Lobby. Tell me a little bit about the book title, how that plays into the book, and what the book's about.
Yeah. So the title came from one of the editors did not like my title. I can't even remember what I picked. I wrote the book right around the time I was selling the business, and sort of during the pandemic, I wrote it and published it the same time I was selling the business. But the title sort of came about as one of the key chapters near the beginning, where there's sort of a litany of rules that sort of govern how you behave in front of customers. And sort of the backstory to the book is is how to get, act, and stay in front of your customers and to be a pleasure to do business with always. And so I have a series of rules and factors that I follow, and some of them relate to when you're making sales calls and what have you. And one of them is never sit in the lobby. And a lot of times people are like, well, should I sit in my car? Where should I sit? And I'm like, you shouldn't sit anywhere. You should be standing, right? You should be waiting, show up on time. And, a little bit early is on time and on time is late, right? And it was born out of the fact that, when you sit down, you tend to get distracted. And when you're distracted, the customer can walk in and you may have to like reestablish focus in the moment. And it's not a good look, right? And a lot of what I explain in the book is how not to be demonstrating a not a good look, right? I don't like that's not a good look. And one of them I find is to be standing up at attention and waiting. And for instance, the very next rule that follows right after that is always have something in your hand and something in your mind. And that's so when the customer walks in, you can greet them. You've got something in your hand to give them. It could be, something business related, like a quotation or literature or something like that, based on that's why you're there. Or maybe you're handing out, mouse pads or water bottles or something that day. But always bring something to hand to the customer and always have something in your mind to speak to them about specifically. It's not a good look when you say, oh, I'm just dropping by to see how you're doing, or that kind of a thing, right? It's more like I dropped by because I wanted to explain to you about this new revision on a product you're using, or a new product that's coming out, or a new something or other, or what have you, right? And then I'll just give you one more rule and take a breath. So, and the next rule is after that, always ask them for a mini tour. And when you're in their lobby, like you want to get past the front door and you want to get into their building. And the main reason for that is you want to see who else is dropping off water bottles and mouse pads, and potentially where your products are being used, or who your competitors' products are and where you sit in the pecking order. For instance, if you show up to talk about a product and you get a little mini tour and you realize, hey, the guy asked you for this, some sort of a widget, and you realize they're actually using your competitor's product and they've got 10 of them running in production or something like that. You realize it's a big different story than when it's maybe a greenfield installation and it's open to anyone, right? So that's where the title came from, and sort of the story behind it.
Love having those kind of rules that just help people be better at their job, be better at sales, be better at connection. Back in the day, I was quite young. I was a college student, and I was teaching these summer camps for a big organization, big national organization that had summer camps sort of down to a science. And one of the rules was no sunglasses. And you're outdoors. I mean, you're in July, right? Bright sun all day long. So of course you'd want to wear sunglasses, but that was a hard and fast rule because sunglasses make you look unapproachable. And you can't connect with the campers and these kids if you're sitting there wearing shades. Same
Wow.
reason you never wear sunglasses in that setting is you never chew gum, because chewing gum makes you look a bit nonchalant and a little bit cool. Gum chewing, it's not a good look. It's not welcoming. And it does affect your speech too when you speak to somebody. It could be distracting to talk to someone while they're chewing gum as they're speaking to you in a conversation. And yes, I mean, not good for the eyeballs. We were allowed to wear visors. That might be your next question. So you could wear a hat. And so you could at least protect your eyes that way, but no sunglasses. And I love,
Right.
another,
Wow.
and these are like so easy to follow because they're so clear cut. It's harder to tell someone be approachable, but it's easier to tell them don't wear sunglasses.
Yeah, I love that. And I've honestly never thought of that one, and it didn't make the book, but I mean, I do have a rule as well, not to chew gum. And the reason why is because it's not a good look, right? And so, yeah, I love that you're also, you were also using that one with the sunglasses. That's a great one. I love that.
So I'm so curious, what's next for you? Whenever someone writes a book, often they're like, okay, now I'm on a roll. If there's another book that I need to write and get down on paper, for others are like, oh, no, one and done. That was my baby. And I put everything of me into that. And that's good. I don't see myself writing another book anytime soon. I'm curious, what are your big projects that you're working on the next year or two?
Yeah, so start off with a little sort of a little bit of a joke, but I mean, I sold my business to private equity and then I went to work with them for 3 years, right? And I was thinking to myself, hey, a perfect next book would be explaining to people the ins and outs of selling your business to private equity and joining them and how you fit in and things like that. And I thought, wow, that would be a really good book. And then I realized, wait a minute, I signed an agreement with them when I left that I wouldn't say anything disparaging. And so clearly it would be a very short book. And it's just a bit of a joke because joining private equity is quite a handful of stuff, right? It's quite a different world, and it's not the kind of world that I grew up in, right? And I wouldn't say that I thrived in it, but I'm trying to think of a worthwhile follow up to the book. There could be, my next 57 rules and tips, but there has to be a good reason for the book, like why I would need it. And I think I got a lot of what I wanted from the book out of the book, you know what I mean? And just, it was a personal goal. I had been working on writing down those tips since the 1980s, and everyone was always telling me you should write those down, put them in a book, et cetera, et cetera. And I kind of got that done. And so I kind of need a good reason. But the second, so the follow up, like what's next? So having sold my company sort of at the same time that I published the book, and then I did the handoff right up until New Year's Eve of last year, December 2024. So what I've decided to do is do another company similar to the other two. The one in 91 I sold in the mid 2000s, then that one I sold in 2022. I want to do it a third time. The difference being I switched technologies and customer area that I'm focusing on. I used to be selling in the telecom space in Canada, and now I moved to Florida and I'm selling to public utilities that generate power. I'm in the power industry. And so I'm in a different country, selling to different customers with different products. And I did that mainly to protect my no compete arrangements that I have with my former employer slash purchaser of my business. But also I love the weather in Florida, and I have the chance to go back and forth now between Toronto and Florida, and it's awesome. And I'm in Florida right now, and it's cold back in Toronto. So that part's really good. And the one other difference is that the first two companies, my first company, I had two other business partners, so there were three of us. And my second business, I had one business partner, and this one I chose to actually buy a company from a sole proprietor and become a sole owner of the business. So it's not from scratch. I am taking over an existing business, but this time I wanted to make sure I did it completely by myself. And obviously, one, so I can have 100% of the control and the thing. But I also, if it goes really well, the other two went pretty well, but I had to divide the first one by 3 and I had to divide the other one by 2. And now this one, I get to keep it all, kind of thing. Sounds a bit greedy, but I mean, entrepreneurs a lot of us are driven by trying to make the big win. And that, quite honestly, I really want to do this the third time to see where I could get to on my own. And so that's really what I'm working on is taking this business that's been around in the US for quite a while and seeing how I can grow it, applying the principles that I've learned in my last two companies.
I mean, you're truly a serial entrepreneur, one after the other.
Yeah, there's been no delay. I left on December 31st, 2024. I left my last business, and then on January 3rd, I got in my car with my French bulldogs and drove to Florida. And on January 6th, I started in Florida, and no break, nothing at all. Yeah, I mean, I do take vacations. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I went from one business right to the next one, and I like being busy kind of thing. I like to get up and go to work and stuff like that. It wasn't like I was saying, oh, I'm going to sit around for a year and do nothing. And it's just not my nature.
So what does an average day or week look like for someone in your space?
So it's pretty normal. And I've always set it up so that I have an office. So I can work from in Canada. I don't have an office in Canada because I used to at my old business. But in Florida, I have an office and a warehouse, and I get up every morning and walk the dogs, take care of my dogs for a while, feed them, do all that stuff. And I decide, hey, first of all, I decided the dog's coming with me to work, or are they going to doggy daycare? And we usually go out for a walk and try to get the steps in, that kind of thing. just putter about at home for a little while. And then I come to the office and I basically work from like sort of 8:30 to 5 on the business. And I'm just trying to do the next right thing all day long. And then I either have the dogs with me and go home, or I go to daycare and pick them up. Then I go home and try to do something active and things like that, and try to stay healthy, have dinner. And then usually I just relax, and in between, different kinds of interests, like playing around with my DJ stuff, my music, playing with the dogs, watching TV. That's really what I do. And it's not nothing really out of the ordinary, but I'm always trying during those 8.5 hours that I'm at work or whatever, sometimes there's not a lot to do. And I'm always trying to find the next thing. Like today, I was working on the newsletter for my business, writing content, doing stuff like that. I was improving the website and looking at a new AI tool to automate lead generation, and also working on some accounting stuff. And so I'm really a jack of all trades in this new role, touching all the different departments in the business.
And I've met cute French bulldogs. I mean, that is just such a great type of dog. I'm sure
Oh yeah.
anytime you go out for a walk, you're like fending off people that just want to like basically sit and put the dogs in their lap, So
Yeah. Driving
but,
down here, I stopped at Charleston, and there's a very long shopping district, which I'd never been there before. And of course, I was walking, and the dogs must have met 1,000 people. It was crazy. It was so much fun.
you're like,
stopped.
hey, I'm the DJ. I'm the celebrity. What?
Yeah, right.
Why don't you want a photo with me?
Yeah.
I love that you're a DJ. I think it's so fun to have outside hobbies and just fun things we do so that we don't end up all work. That's the sort of that can throttle you in life, is to become only work. But when you're out there doing other things and writing books and DJing and taking those Frenchies out for walks, I mean, that's life, that's living. And I think that also reflects in how successful you are, because when you're a whole person and you do have work-life balance, you're able to sort of bring more of yourself into your job and to not become jaded or sort of worn out and less inspired. So I love the way you're doing it. I think it's a great way to do it. Tell us about your podcast, because you also have a podcast. There's people listening who clearly love listening to podcasts. So tell us about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there's actually maybe a good lesson there too, because a few months ago, I had to make the decision to not close the podcast, but go on what I'm calling a sabbatical, because I realized there was only so much of me to go around in a way. And I was finding that it's so much easier to be on a podcast than it is to run a podcast. So I have a lot of respect for what you're doing, because I know how much preparation and post editing and all that goes into this. And I had found that during the transition of having to leave the job I'd been at for 18 years, sold the company, private equity, all that, and then working on buying a new business, moving to Florida, getting my getting my visa and stuff like that, so I could work in the US. And I wasn't able to give the guests the proper shake. So I sort of put it on hold, hoping in the summertime that by then most of all this stuff will be settled down, and I'll have the time needed to give to the guests. So, but the idea behind the podcast is the Profit Powerhouse Podcast, and just trying to talk to people that are running, have run, sold, or started businesses, and entrepreneurs, to help people make that step from 9 to 5 for someone else to working for themselves and running a business. Because, I know how scary it can be. And so just wanting to share as many stories about starting, growing, building a profitable business. And that's the idea behind the podcast. Although like I said, I'm on a little bit of a break right now while I'm getting this other business going.
I just love when, as entrepreneurs, really just people, we can decide when we need to put something more on a back burner or to take a break or sabbatical from whatever it might be. It could be work. It could be, I need a weekend away from the family. Yeah. You never know, but just knowing yourself, knowing who you are and what you need at any given time in order to find your success, that's so important. It takes a certain amount of self-insight, which clearly you have. And I'm just so excited to see where you go from here and what you do while you build this new company. So tell us some parting words of wisdom, because there's a lot of people listening who have big dreams and hopes and aspirations. But for whatever reason, sometimes it's just hard to get off the bench, and to make your dreams happen and to take action. What would you say to someone who's feeling in that mood and who just needs to hear some words from someone who has actually had forward momentum their entire life and sort of refuses to just let things get stagnant, and you start businesses, sell businesses, you just keep life interesting? Tell us what you would say to someone who wants to live in your footsteps.
Great, no problem. And I have a little analogy. I call it hitting the wall, which is how I explain my thesis on becoming an entrepreneur and taking those vital steps that are required. And the way I ask people to imagine that, they're in their 9 to 5 and they've got some customers that they think they can sell to. They've got some products they think they can sell, whether it's software, service, products, whatever, it doesn't matter. But they've got all the pieces and puzzles and, sort of in their mind what they want to do. But what's really happened to them is they've hit this wall where they're like scared to quit the job. Like, oh, what if I lose my benefits? What if I lose my paycheck? Et cetera, right? And they keep hitting this wall and they can't really get past it through essentially fear, right? And so first thing you have to understand is that in order for the entrepreneurial thing to work, you have to make sure that either one, you have a spouse that will pay for your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or two, you need to have enough money saved up that you can survive for a year, whether you're moving back home with your parents or whether you're, like I said, your husband or wife is helping you, or you need like a year to 18 months of runway where you don't need to burden your company, right? Like there's no business typically that's going to start paying you the way your 9 to 5 is right away, right? So if you've got the products and the ideas and laid out, the concept that I want people to understand is a lot of people still get scared when they hit the wall, right? And what I challenge them to do is to think of the wall just as a moment in time. And when you're working for someone else, you're butting up against the wall and you keep hitting it and you keep bouncing back and doing the same thing over and over again. But if they can just climb up and jump over that wall, they're still going to be fraught with fear. But the reality is now the fear of failure will be replaced with a fear of failure that's 10 times bigger. And that fear will drive them forward. And what happens is the wall becomes something that's behind them at that point, right? And so you're going to do everything possible at that point not to fail. You figured out your products and your customers and your business idea before you made the jump, and either your friends and family are helping to support you, or you've got enough money in the bank to support yourself. And every day you're going to take as many steps as you can to move that business forward. And as you look over your shoulder, you'll start to see that wall getting farther and farther away. And in 6 months, the wall you won't even see it. You won't even remember that it existed. But the difference between one side of the wall and the other is really just one giant step that you need to take. And you just need to do it. Like you just need to step up and step over. And that's how you become an entrepreneur. That's it. And that's really what I did. My employer at my first sales company, they upset me when I brought a business model. The next day I quit my job. Now I didn't sit there for a year and fret hitting up against the wall. I came up against the wall and I jumped over it right away. But other people might take a bit more time, but it's still the same idea. You just got to get that step and then do everything you can to be successful. So.
Wow, Glenn, amazing, brilliant advice. Thank you so much for giving your words, your inspiration, your motivation. I mean, you do that through your book, you do it through your podcast. You're out there just sharing what you know and what's in your heart and helping so many people achieve their goals. So thank you for all that you do out in the world.
Oh, thanks, Flavia.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness, but money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use the coupon code PODCAST, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.